The CEO's Reckoning, a story of undeniable class. Before we dive in, do you think first impressions are always true? Let us know in the comments below. And please, like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories. The company party. Are you really inviting her? Lena Davies crossed her arms, looking at James Miller with that smile he knew far too well. Don't tell me you're getting charitable. James didn't even look up from his documents. Isabella Stone, his assistant, organized files near his desk, pretending not to listen. It's the firm's annual party, he replied coldly. All employees are invited. All important employees, Lena corrected, raising her voice enough for Isabella to hear. Or will your assistant understand what we adults are talking about? The other partners chuckled. Isabella clutched the papers in her hands, but remained silent. Lena's right, interrupted Robert King, one of the senior partners. People of our class don't mix with, well, you know. James finally looked up. For a second, his eyes met Isabella's. She looked at him without pleading, without hope. Just with that silent dignity he had never understood. Isabella, he said, his voice harsher than he intended. You're cordially invited to the party this Saturday. I hope you know how to behave. The silence thickened. Isabella carefully placed the files on the desk, as if they were made of crystal. Thank you, Mr. Miller, she replied, expressionless. I'll consider your invitation. Lena burst into laughter. My God, did you see her? Like an offended queen. She's going to be fun, Robert added. Watching her try to fit in with us. James said nothing. He stared at the door where Isabella had exited, a strange sensation in his chest he couldn't identify. The wisdom of a sister. That night, Isabella arrived at her small apartment completely exhausted. Her younger sister, Sophia, was studying at the dining table. How was your day? Sophia asked, without looking up from her books. Isabella collapsed onto the sofa. I was invited to the company party. Sophia raised her eyebrows. And is that good or bad? Bad. Very bad. Why? Isabella closed her eyes. She could still hear Lena's laughter, see the mocking glances of the partners. Because they didn't invite me to include me, Sophia. They invited me to humiliate me. Her sister put down her pencil and came closer to the sofa. Isabella, look at me. Isabella opened her eyes. Sophia had that serious expression she used when she wanted to give important advice. What do you want to do? Stay home. Pretend I'm sick. Is that what you really want? Isabella sighed. No, I want to go and prove them wrong, but I'm afraid of making a fool of myself. Sophia sat beside her. Sister, you've been working at that firm for 3 years. You've seen how they behave, how they talk, how they move in their world. Do you think you can't do the same? They were born into that world. I wasn't. But you're smarter than all of them put together. Sophia took her hand. And you have something they'll never have. What? Real class. Not the kind you buy with money, but the kind you carry in your soul. Isabella felt her eyes well up. What if I'm wrong? What if I only confirm what they already think of me? Sophia squeezed her hand. Then you'll be wrong with your head held high. But Isabella has always been bigger than that place. It's time they realized it. Isabella remained silent, looking out the window at the city lights. Somewhere, James and Lena were in their world of luxury. Sure, she wouldn't dare to show up. Perhaps it was time to surprise them. The grand entrance. Saturday night. The ballroom of the city's most exclusive hotel buzzed with elegant conversations and rehearsed laughter. James adjusted his tie for the 10th time, glancing towards the entrance every few minutes. Waiting for someone? Lena appeared beside him, radiant in a golden dress that cost more than Isabella's monthly salary. I'm just checking everything is in order, he lied, sipping his whiskey. Relax, love. Your little assistant surely stayed home watching soap operas. Lena chuckled. It's obvious she wouldn't come. Robert approached with 2 other partners, all with drinks in hand. Still waiting for the show? He asked sarcastically. I bet she doesn't even have a decent dress. Or maybe she'll come in her office uniform. Another added, provoking laughter. James forced a smile, but something in his stomach twisted. A part of him hoped Isabella wouldn't come, to avoid the humiliation everyone had planned. Another part wanted to see what would happen if she dared. Ladies and gentlemen, the master of ceremonies announced. Dinner is served. The guests began to move towards the main dining room. James was walking next to Lena when the murmur of conversations abruptly ceased. He turned towards the entrance and felt the air escape his lungs. Isabella stood in the doorway, completely motionless. She wore a classic red dress, simple but perfectly cut, enhancing her figure without exaggeration. Her dark hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders. She wore no flashy jewelry, just small, discreetly shining earrings. Her eyes calmly swept the room, as if she owned the place. The silence stretched for seconds that felt eternal. Some guests looked at her with curiosity, others with thinly disguised surprise. Isabella began to walk. Her steps were confident, measured. She didn't look at the floor, nor did she seem nervous. She moved as if she had been born in such ballrooms. My God, someone whispered behind James. Who is that woman? Lena had turned pale, her hand clutching James's arm. It's, she whispered. It's impossible. How can she look like that? Isabella approached the main group. When she was in front of James, she gave a slight nod. Good evening, Mr. Miller. Thank you for the invitation. Her voice was serene, educated. None of the shyness she showed in the office. Isabella. James could barely utter her name. You look different. She smiled, and that smile completely transformed her face. Different? I just put on a dress, Mr. Miller. Nothing more. Robert coughed uncomfortably. Yes, well, what? What a surprise to see you here. Surprise? Isabella looked directly at him. Didn't you expect me to come, Mr. King? No, of course not. I mean, Lena interrupted, regaining her composure. Robert means we're delighted to have you here, though I must say that dress looks interesting on you. Did you buy it especially for the occasion? The venom in her voice was evident, but Isabella didn't flinch. Actually, I've had it for years. Sometimes the simple things are the most elegant, don't you think? Lena narrowed her eyes. Isabella had just politely told her that her golden dress was vulgar. Of course, Lena retorted, with a forced smile. Though I suppose for someone in your position, it must be difficult to know exactly what to wear for these events. You're right, Isabella nodded. Fortunately, elegance isn't something you buy with money. You either have it or you don't. A murmur went through the group. Several guests had approached to listen to the conversation. Isabella had responded to Lena's attack without raising her voice, without losing her smile. But her message had been clear. James watched the scene as if hypnotized. This wasn't the shy, silent Isabella from the office. This woman had a presence that filled the space, a confidence that didn't need to shout to be noticed. Isabella! A voice behind her. Everyone turned. An older, elegantly dressed man approached with a genuine smile. Mr. Dubois! Isabella's face lit up. What a surprise to see you here, my dear Isabella. The man kissed her on both cheeks. When I saw your name on the guest list, I couldn't believe it. Do you work with these gentlemen? James frowned. Pierre Dubois was one of Europe's most important investors, an occasional client of the firm. I'm Mr. Miller's assistant, Isabella replied naturally. Assistant? Dubois looked at James in surprise. Do you know who this young lady is, James? James shook his head, feeling increasingly confused. Isabella was the coordinator of the literacy program we funded in Paris 3 years ago. Her project helped over 1,000 immigrant families, an extraordinary woman. The group fell into complete silence. Isabella just smiled modestly. It was an honor to work on that project, Mr. Dubois. And she spoke perfect French, the man continued. Isabella, you must tell me what you're doing now. Are you still working on social programs? Lena looked as if she'd seen a ghost. Robert had stopped smiling. James realized he knew absolutely nothing about the woman who had been his assistant for 3 years. Isabella Stone had just changed all the rules of the game, and the night was just beginning. What do you think will happen next? How will Isabella's past redefine her present? Share your predictions in the comments, and if you're enjoying this thrilling story, like it, and subscribe for more amazing content. The consequences. The dinner unfolded in a tense atmosphere that only Isabella seemed not to notice. Lena had strategically seated herself near her, ready to attack at the opportune moment. Isabella, darling, Lena began, deliberately refined as she cut her salmon. It must be fascinating to work with such sophisticated people after coming from such a different background. Isabella calmly chewed before replying. Are you referring to working with wealthy people after working with poor people? The direct question made several diners stop midway through their meal. Well, I wouldn't have put it in such blunt terms. Lena chuckled nervously. Why not? Poverty isn't a contagious disease, Ms. Davies, and wealth is no guarantee of sophistication. Robert coughed. Surely you've had to adapt a lot to work at our firm. On the contrary, Isabella smiled. I've found that people are basically the same, no matter how much money they have. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone needs respect. Everyone makes mistakes. What a picturesque perspective, Lena murmured. Though I suppose it's easy to philosophize when others are paying the bills. This time, Isabella didn't reply immediately. She took a sip of wine and looked at Lena with genuine curiosity. Have you ever worked, Ms. Davies? Of course I've worked. Lena straightened up. I oversee my family's investments. I coordinate charity events. I mean working for a paycheck, Isabella gently clarified. Waking up every morning knowing that if you don't, there's no money for rent. The silence became awkward. Isabella continued in a soft voice. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying that every perspective is valid. You see the world from your reality, I from mine. Just then, a man approached the table. He wore a professional camera around his neck. Excuse the interruption, I'm Mark Grant from Global Times. Could I speak with you for a moment, Ms. Stone? Everyone turned to Isabella, surprised. With me? Isabella seemed genuinely confused. I think you have the wrong person. Are you Isabella Stone, the coordinator of the Books Without Borders project in Paris? Isabella nodded slowly. Perfect. I'm writing an article on successful social inclusion programs. Your project appeared in my research as one of the most effective of the last decade. Lena gripped her glass so tightly her knuckles turned white. Mr. Grant, she interrupted. I believe you're interrupting a private dinner. No problem. Isabella stood gracefully. We can talk right here, if no one else minds. Grant turned on a small recorder. Tell me about the Paris project. How did you get families from 15 different nationalities to participate in a literacy program? Isabella visibly relaxed. For the first time that night, she seemed completely in her element. The key was understanding that education isn't a favor we do for others. It's a right we return to them. Many of those families had professionals, artists, intellectuals, who had lost their credentials when migrating. Can you give me a specific example? There was a man, Amara, who had been a literature professor in Senegal. In Paris, he sold flowers in the subway. When he discovered he could teach French to other immigrants using African texts he translated himself, He regained not only a dignified job, but his identity. Grant nodded, taking notes quickly. And the language aspect? I understand you coordinated sessions in French, Arabic and English, and Spanish and Wolof when necessary, Isabella added. My grandmother always said that every language you learn makes you a different person. I believe it makes you a more complete person. Impressive. Do you speak all those languages? Isabella blushed slightly. I handle the basics well. For in-depth work, I always collaborated with native speakers. Grant turned to James. Mr. Miller, you must be very proud to have an employee of this international caliber. James cleared his throat. All eyes were on him. Yes, of course. Isabella is very valuable to our firm. What projects do you have her working on now? The question landed like a bomb. James couldn't say that Isabella spent her days filing papers and serving coffee. We're evaluating new opportunities to leverage her international experience. He lied. Grant smiled. Excellent. The world needs more initiatives like Ms. Stone's. Could we take some photos? For the next few minutes, Isabella posed for several photographs. She looked natural, comfortable. She answered questions with intelligence and humility. She spoke of her projects without sounding boastful or anxious. When Grant left, the table fell into absolute silence. Isabella returned to her seat, as if nothing had happened. Well, she said, taking her drink. Where were we? Lena looked at her as if she were an alien. Robert seemed to have swallowed his tongue. James realized he had spent 3 years working alongside an extraordinary woman without even trying to get to know her. And the most unsettling thing of all was that Isabella didn't seem to notice the commotion she had caused. For her, all of this was simply normal. The night was just beginning, but the rules of the game no longer existed. What do you think James's newfound understanding will mean for Isabella and for the firm? Share your thoughts below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for the thrilling consequences. The consequences. Sunday morning, James arrived at the office 30 minutes late with a headache that threatened to split his skull. He hadn't slept well since the party. The images of Isabella in that red dress, speaking naturally in front of the cameras, replayed in his mind like a broken record. His secretary, Kelly, was waiting for him with a pile of messages and a strange expression. Mr. Miller needs to see this, she said, extending her tablet. On the screen, a YouTube video showed Isabella entering the hotel ballroom. The title read, "The Assistant Who Conquered the Elite. Her Story Will Shock You." It already had over 200,000 views. How in hell? James sank into his chair. The video went viral last night. It's all over social media. The full interview also came out in Global Times. James played the video. The camera perfectly captured the moment Isabella entered the ballroom and the silence that followed. Then it showed snippets of her interview with Grant, where she spoke about social projects with obvious passion. The comments were overwhelming. What an amazing woman. I wish there were more people like her. Look how the rich people stare at her. They're green with envy. She truly has real class. Did you see the blonde's face? Pure venom. James's phone rang. It was Robert. James, did you see the disaster? We need to talk. Now, 15 minutes later, the 4 senior partners were gathered in the boardroom. The atmosphere was heavy. This is a catastrophe, Robert paced back and forth. Our firm looks like a nest of elitists exploiting their employees. The phone hasn't stopped ringing, added David Black. Lena's father, a major partner, journalists, activists, even some clients asking what's going on, and all because of your brilliant idea to invite the help. Black snapped. What were you thinking? James clenched his fists. Isabella isn't the help. She's our executive assistant. Executive assistant? Robert let out a bitter laugh. Since when does serving coffee make you an executive? Did you know she speaks 5 languages? That she coordinated international projects before working here? James stood up. Did you bother to read her resume even once? Her resume? Black looked at him with contempt. James, we hire people like her to do the dirty work, not to give us moral lessons. At that moment, the door opened. Lena entered like a hurricane, her eyes red and her makeup smeared. This is a disaster, she shrieked. They're humiliating me all over social media. There are memes of my face, James. Memes! She dramatically slumped into a chair. My friends aren't talking to me. My stylist says it's best I change my image because mine is already ruined. All because of that woman. Lena, calm down. James tried to touch her shoulder, but she pulled away. Don't touch me. This is your fault. You invited her. You allowed her to humiliate us. Robert seized the moment. James, we have to take drastic measures. The firm's image is at stake. What kind of measures? Obviously, Isabella has to go today. Fire her? For what reason? You need a reason. Black leaned back in his chair. Find something. Delays, document errors, whatever. But if you fire her now... Lena intervened, wiping her tears. There's going to be retaliation. The media will make an even bigger scandal. Black smiled maliciously. Not if we do it right. A review of her work, some conveniently discovered errors, perhaps attitude problems. These things take time. James looked at these men he had considered his partners, even his friends. In their faces, he saw something he had never noticed before. Fear. Fear that someone like Isabella could expose them for who they truly were. No, he said softly. Pardon? No, we're not firing Isabella. Robert straightened. James, don't be naive. This woman is destroying our reputation. Our reputation or our hypocrisy? The silence was tense. Lena looked at him, narrowing her eyes. Do you like that woman, James? The question landed like a slap. James felt all eyes on him. This has nothing to do with personal preferences. Then prove it. Black leaned forward. Prove your loyalty still lies with us. James looked out the window. Outside, the city continued its normal rhythm. But inside that office, something fundamental had changed. He could no longer pretend he didn't see the cracks that had always been there. His phone vibrated. A text message from an unknown number. Mr. Miller, I'm a journalist from ABC News. Could we talk about Isabella Stone and working conditions at your firm? James turned off his phone and looked at his partners. I need time to think. We're running out of time, Robert retorted. Either she goes, or this is going to get much worse. As he left the boardroom, James couldn't help but wonder how he had gotten there. A week ago, his life was predictable, comfortable. Now he felt he was standing at the edge of a cliff, and someone had just lit the fuse of a bomb. The problem was, he no longer knew if he wanted to put out the fuse or just jump. What will James do next? Fight for the firm or for Isabella? How will his decision impact his relationships with his partners and Lena? Share your predictions in the comments. And if you're on the edge of your seat, hit that like button and subscribe for the next thrilling chapter. A necessary apology. 2 weeks after the restaurant disaster, James tried to maintain normalcy, but the cracks were evident everywhere. Isabella continued working as if nothing had happened. But now the other employees looked at her with a mix of respect and curiosity that hadn't existed before. The true test came on a Thursday night. The partners had organized a dinner with potential Japanese investors at the city's most exclusive restaurant. Lena insisted on accompanying James, as she always did for important meetings. You need to project stability, she had told him while getting ready in his apartment. After all this scandal, clients need to see that you're still the same. But James no longer felt the same. And that night, things completely spiraled out of control. It all started when they arrived at the restaurant. The Japanese investors were already waiting, along with Robert and David. The introductions were cordial, professional. James thought perhaps the evening would pass without incident. He was wrong. Midway through dinner, while discussing the details of a possible merger with an Asian firm, one of the Japanese investors casually mentioned having seen Isabella's video. "Your employee is very impressive, Mr. Miller. In Japan, we highly value people who combine humility with excellence." Lena put her glass down harder than necessary. "Well, you know how these social media things are. Everything gets exaggerated a lot." The Japanese man looked at her with polite curiosity. "Exaggerated? But Ms. Stone's achievements are documented. Her project in Paris was recognized by UNESCO." David coughed uncomfortably. "Mr. Yamamoto, I think the conversation is straying from important topics." "On the contrary," another investor intervened. "A company that leverages talent regardless of social background is exactly the kind of firm we want to work with." Lena let out a forced laugh. "Please, you talk as if she's Mother Teresa. She's just another employee who got lucky with cameras." The silence that followed was chilling. The Japanese exchanged glances. "Excuse me," Mr. Yamamoto said in a controlled voice, "but did you just minimize your colleague's professional achievements?" "Colleague?" Lena laughed louder. "She's an assistant. Her job is to organize files and serve coffee. I don't see why we have to pretend she's something more." James felt the blood rush to his head. "Lena, stop!" "Stop what? Telling the truth?" She turned to him, her eyes burning with anger. "We're all pretending that woman is some kind of saint, just because she caused a scandal on social media. Lena, please. No." She stood up, clearly agitated. "I'm sick of this. Sick of everyone treating that intruder as if she's special. You know what I think? I think she's trying to steal my place." She turned to James. "Or have you already forgotten who was with you all these years? Who supported you when you started the firm? Who's been at every event, every important meeting?" James slowly stood up. "Lena, let's go now." "I'm not going anywhere. These gentlemen need to know the truth. They need to know that Isabella Stone is an opportunist who is using her sob story to manipulate everyone." Mr. Yamamoto wiped his mouth with his napkin and stood up. "Mr. Miller, I believe this dinner is over for us. Mr. Yamamoto, please, allow me to explain." "There's nothing to explain." The Japanese man spoke coldly. "In my culture, respect for employees is fundamental. What we have just witnessed tells us everything we need to know about this firm." The investors left in silence, leaving the partners at a table filled with tension. Lena remained standing, breathing heavily. "Perfect," she shouted. "Now because of that woman, we lost $1 million contract. Because of that woman, no." James finally exploded. "Because of you. Because of your spoiled princess attitude who can't stand someone else getting attention." Lena looked at him as if he had slapped her. "How dare you?" "How dare I?" "You know what, Lena? You're right. Isabella Stone is stealing something. She's stealing the illusion that we're better people just because we have money." Robert tried to calm the situation. "James, we're all upset." "No." James turned to him. "You know what I found out this week? That Lena has been using my name to close deals without my authorization. That she's been promising mergers and partnerships that I never approved." David paled. "James, what are you talking about?" "He's talking about how he investigated me behind my back." Lena raised her chin defiantly. "Yes, I used your name. Yes, I moved some contracts. So what? Someone had to make decisions while you were distracted playing social benefactor." Playing? James looked at her with a mix of disgust and sadness. Lena, we've been together for 3 years. I thought I knew you. You know me perfectly well. You just never liked what you saw. James was silent for a moment. Then, in a very calm voice, he said, You're right, and that ends tonight. He turned and walked towards the exit, leaving Lena screaming his name in the middle of the city's most elegant restaurant. Outside, under the light rain that had begun to fall, James realized that, for the first time in years, he felt free. A new chapter was beginning. What profound impact will James's public apology and the revelations about Lena have on Isabella's life and career? Will she return to the firm or forge a new path? Share your predictions in the comments. And if you're deeply moved by James's transformation, hit that like button and subscribe for the powerful conclusion. 2 weeks after the restaurant disaster, James tried to maintain normalcy, but the fissures were evident everywhere. Isabella continued working as if nothing had happened, but now the other employees looked at her with a mix of respect and curiosity that hadn't existed before. The ultimate test came on a Thursday night. The partners had organized a dinner with potential Japanese investors at the city's most exclusive restaurant. Lena insisted on accompanying James, as she always did for important meetings. You need to project stability, she had told him while getting ready in his apartment. After all this scandal, clients need to see that you're still the same. But James no longer felt the same, and that night things completely spiraled out of control. It all started when they arrived at the restaurant. The Japanese investors were already waiting, along with Robert and David. The introductions were cordial, professional. James thought perhaps the evening would pass without incident. He was wrong. Midway through dinner, while discussing the details of a possible merger with an Asian firm, one of the Japanese investors casually mentioned having seen Isabella's video. Your employee is very impressive, Mr. Miller. In Japan, we highly value people who combine humility with excellence. Lena put her glass down harder than necessary. Well, you know how these social media things are. Everything gets exaggerated a lot. The Japanese man looked at her with polite curiosity. Exaggerated? But Ms. Stone's achievements are documented. Her project in Paris was recognized by UNESCO. David coughed uncomfortably. Mr. Yamamoto, I think the conversation is straying from important topics. On the contrary, another investor intervened. A company that leverages talent regardless of social background is exactly the kind of firm we want to work with. Lena let out a forced laugh. Please, you talk as if she's Mother Teresa. She's just another employee who got lucky with cameras. The silence that followed was chilling. The Japanese exchanged glances. Excuse me, Mr. Yamamoto said in a controlled voice. But did you just minimize your colleague's professional achievements? Colleague? Lena laughed louder. She's an assistant. Her job is to organize files and serve coffee. I don't see why we have to pretend she's something more. James felt the blood rush to his head. Lena, stop! Stop what? Telling the truth? She turned to him, her eyes burning with anger. We're all pretending that woman is some kind of saint, just because she caused a scandal on social media. Lena, please, no. She stood up, clearly agitated. I'm sick of this. Sick of everyone treating that intruder as if she's special. You know what I think? I think she's trying to steal my place. She turned to James. Or have you already forgotten who was with you all these years? Who supported you when you started the firm? Who's been at every event, every important meeting? James slowly stood up. Lena, let's go now. I'm not going anywhere. These gentlemen need to know the truth. They need to know that Isabella Stone is an opportunist who is using her sob story to manipulate everyone. Mr. Yamamoto wiped his mouth with his napkin and stood up. Mr. Miller, I believe this dinner is over for us. Mr. Yamamoto, please, allow me to explain. There's nothing to explain. The Japanese man spoke coldly. In my culture, respect for employees is fundamental. What we have just witnessed tells us everything we need to know about this firm. The investors left in silence, leaving the partners at a table filled with tension. Lena remained standing, breathing heavily. Perfect, she shouted. Now because of that woman, we lost $1 million contract. Because of that woman, no. James finally exploded. Because of you! Because of your spoiled princess attitude, who can't stand someone else getting attention. Lena looked at him as if he had slapped her. How dare you? How dare I? You know what, Lena? You're right. Isabella Stone is stealing something. She's stealing the illusion that we're better people just because we have money. Robert tried to calm the situation. James, we're all upset. No. James turned to him. You know what I found out this week? That Lena has been using my name to close deals without my authorization. That she's been promising mergers and partnerships that I never approved. David paled. James, what are you talking about? He's talking about how he investigated me behind my back. Lena raised her chin defiantly. Yes, I used your name. Yes, I moved some contracts. So what? Someone had to make decisions while you were distracted playing social benefactor. Playing? James looked at her with a mix of disgust and sadness. Lena, we've been together for 3 years. I thought I knew you. You know me perfectly well. You just never liked what you saw. James was silent for a moment. Then, in a very calm voice, he said, You're right, and that ends tonight. He turned and walked towards the exit, leaving Lena screaming his name in the middle of the city's most elegant restaurant. Outside, under the light rain that had begun to fall, James realized that, for the first time in years, he felt free. A new chapter was beginning. A necessary apology. 3 days after the restaurant disaster, James found himself sitting in front of his computer at 5 a.m, writing and erasing the same paragraph for the 10th time. Beside him, a cold coffee cup and several crumpled drafts testified to his internal struggle. Isabella had been absent since Monday. Kelly had told him she had requested a few personal days, but James suspected Robert or David had something to do with her sudden absence. The rumor in the office was that the partners were preparing a dismissal letter. The official version would be a personnel restructuring. But everyone knew the truth. James finished writing and reread the document one more time. It was a letter addressed to the city's most prominent newspaper, and he knew that once he sent it, there would be no turning back. At 8 a.m, when Robert arrived at the office with his usual air of superiority, he was met with an unpleasant surprise. His assistant handed him the morning newspaper with a worried look. On the opinion page, with a photo of James Miller, an article appeared titled, A Necessary Apology and a Pending Reflection. Robert read the first lines and felt his blood run cold. As a founding partner of Miller & Associates, I feel the need to publicly address an exceptional employee and society in general to offer a long overdue apology. Isabella Stone has worked at our firm for 3 years. During that time, my partners and I treated her not as the capable professional she is, but as a second-class employee whose only function was to facilitate our daily work. Last week's scandal was not caused by Isabella. It was caused by our inability to recognize the talent we had in front of us. It was caused by our class arrogance, our social blindness, our comfort with a system that benefits us at the cost of keeping others in positions that do not reflect their true capabilities. Robert ran to James's office, but found it empty. His assistant explained that he had arrived early, left some documents, and had left, without saying when he would return. Robert's phone rang. It was David. "Did you see the newspaper?" James has gone completely crazy. I'm reading it now. This is a disaster. He's sinking us. Do you know how many clients have called this morning asking if it's true that we discriminate against our employees? Robert continued reading. Isabella Stone doesn't need us to defend her. Her achievements speak for themselves, but we do need to defend ourselves, from the moral mediocrity that allows us to sleep peacefully while we waste talents due to class prejudices. Therefore, effective today, Isabella Stone will be promoted to Coordinator of Special Projects, with the salary and responsibilities she should have always had. I also announce my temporary withdrawal from the firm's daily operations to reflect on the kind of company we want to be and the kind of people we want to be. He's crazy, David shouted over the phone. Coordinator of Special Projects? He's giving her a position that doesn't even exist. Wait, there's more. Robert continued reading. To Lena Davies, who for years was my romantic partner and with whom I believed I shared a future, I say that love cannot be built on the basis of contempt for others. Her reaction last week showed me a side of her that I had denied. To my partners, I remind them that a company is not just a business. It is a reflection of our values as human beings. And to Isabella, I apologize for the 3 lost years, for not having seen what everyone else saw from day one. That you are an extraordinary woman who deserves much more than this place has given you. Robert dropped the newspaper. His phone kept ringing. David kept shouting over the phone, but he no longer heard him. Meanwhile, in a small downtown coffee shop, Isabella read the same article with trembling hands. Sophia was sitting across from her, observing every expression on her face. "What do you think?" her younger sister asked. Isabella slowly folded the newspaper. "I think it's very easy to write beautiful words when you have nothing to lose. Do you think he's not sincere?" Isabella sighed. "I think James Miller finally woke up. The problem is he woke up 3 years too late." Her phone began to ring. Unknown numbers, one after another. Journalists, television producers, social organizations. James's article had turned Isabella into a symbol. "Whether you like it or not, are you going back to work?" Sophia asked. Isabella looked out the coffee shop window. Outside, people hurried to their jobs, each carrying their own invisible struggles. "I don't know," she replied honestly. "I don't know if I want to be James Miller's redemption project." But deep in her heart, something had changed. For the first time in 3 years, someone had truly seen her. The question was whether that was enough to build something new on the ruins of the old. Her phone rang again. This time, it was a number she recognized. It was James. Isabella stared at the screen for several seconds before deciding whether to answer. Will Isabella finally answer James's call? Or will she choose to move on from her past with the firm? What will their next encounter bring after such a public apology? Share your predictions in the comments. If you're on the edge of your seat, hit that like button and subscribe for the powerful conclusion. Finding true value, Isabella let the phone ring until it stopped. Then, it rang again, and again. On the 4th try, Sophia looked at her exasperated. "Aren't you going to answer?" "I'm not ready for that conversation." But the phone kept ringing intermittently all morning. Text messages, missed calls, even an email that Isabella deleted without reading. 3 weeks later, Isabella had found some peace in her new routine. Job offers had poured in by the dozens after James's article. Some were clearly opportunistic, but others came from serious organizations that valued her real experience. She had accepted a temporary position coordinating a digital literacy program for seniors. It didn't pay much, but it gave her the freedom to do what truly mattered to her. James, according to what she had read in the newspapers, had kept his word. He had temporarily withdrawn from the firm and was involved in several free legal education projects for low-income communities. Isabella had seen his photo in an article about a legal aid program in underprivileged neighborhoods. He looked different, thinner, less polished, as if he had exchanged his designer suit for something more real. The reunion happened by chance, one Saturday afternoon, at the historic district book fair. Isabella was at the booth of an independent publisher, browse a book on educational programs in Latin America. When a familiar voice said, "Is that good?" Isabella turned around. James was beside her, dressed in jeans and a simple shirt, carrying a bag full of books. James and Isabella looked at each other for a moment that seemed eternal. He looked tired, but there was something different in his eyes, a tranquility she didn't remember seeing before. "How are you?" he finally asked. "Good. Working on things I like." "I'm glad to hear that." Isabella closed the book and put it back on the shelf. "I read about your new projects." "Oh, what do you think? It's easy to be generous when you have nothing to lose." James's smile faded. "You're right, but sometimes you need to lose everything to realize what you never truly had." Isabella studied him. There was no trace of the arrogant man she had known in the office. This James seemed younger, more human. "Do you want to get coffee?" he asked. "There's a cafe nearby that—" "I know the place." They walked in silence through the cobblestone streets of the historic center. The fair had filled the area with families, students, readers of all ages. Isabella watched as James casually greeted some street vendors, how he stopped to give coins to a street musician. "How long have you been coming here?" Isabella asked. "A few weeks, since I started the legal aid program. Many of our beneficiaries live around here." "Our beneficiaries?" James blushed slightly. "The program's beneficiaries. You know what I meant." Isabella smiled for the first time since they met. "Yes, I know what you meant." The coffee shop was small, noisy, full of students and local artists. Very different from the elegant places where Isabella had seen James before. They sat at a table by the window. James ordered an Americano and Isabella chamomile tea. "How are things at the firm?" Isabella asked. "Difficult. Robert and David are furious with me. We lost several important clients after the article. Do you regret it?" James considered the question seriously. The damage to the firm, yes. There were innocent people working there who had nothing to do with all this. But writing the letter, no. And Lena? Lena moved to Miami. Her family has businesses there. I think she needed a change of scenery after. Everything. Isabella nodded. She felt no satisfaction at Lena's downfall, only a kind of sadness for how unnecessary the whole conflict had been. "Isabella?" James leaned forward. "I know I have no right to ask you for anything after." "You're right," she interrupted him. "You have no right." He leaned back in his chair, accepting the blow. "But you can try," Isabella added softly. "You can try to be the person you say you want to be, without expecting me or anyone else to forgive you for who you were before." James looked at her with something that could have been gratitude. "Do you know what's the hardest part of all this?" he said. "What?" "That for 3 years, I had one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met in front of me, and I never bothered to truly see her." Isabella took a sip of her tea. "Perhaps you weren't ready to see me. Perhaps I wasn't ready to be seen either. And now?" Isabella looked him in the eyes. There was honesty there, but also uncertainty. James Miller was no longer the self-assured man who believed he had all the answers. Now that, "I think we're both learning to be different, and that's enough for today." They fell silent, drinking their cups, while outside the fair continued its cheerful bustle. For the first time in years, Isabella felt at peace with the unanswered questions. Sometimes, she thought, new beginnings didn't come with fanfare. Sometimes they simply arrived as a quiet afternoon, shared with someone who had finally learned to see her, building a shared future. A shared future. 2 months after that encounter at the fair, Isabella received an unexpected call. It was James, but his voice sounded different. Less confident. More human. Isabella, I know this might sound strange, but would you like to help me with something? Isabella was organizing materials for her digital literacy class when she answered the phone. Help you with what? The legal aid program isn't working as I expected. People don't trust us, and I think I know why. Isabella stopped what she was doing. I'm listening. We're still acting like saviors coming down from our ivory towers. Could you meet with me? Just to talk, to help me understand what I'm doing wrong. Isabella looked out the window of her small temporary office. Outside, some of her older students practiced texting on their new phones, laughing at their own mistakes. Where? How about the same coffee shop as last time? Tomorrow at 3. I'll be there. The next day, Isabella arrived a few minutes early. James was already there, but he wasn't alone. 3 people accompanied him. An older woman, a young man in a work uniform, and a teenager no older than 16. Isabella! James stood up when he saw her. Let me introduce you to Mrs. Green, Luis, and Andrea. They came to tell me why our program isn't working. Isabella sat down, intrigued. Mrs. Green spoke first. Ms. Stone, my grandson told me about you. He says you teach computers without making us feel silly. You're not silly at all, Isabella replied. You're just learning something new. Exactly, Luis interrupted. But when we went to Mr. Miller's office about my problem with my boss, they made us fill out like 10 papers and talk to us with words we didn't understand. Andrea nodded. They scheduled appointments at 10 in the morning when my mom is working, as if we don't know that poor people can't just miss work like that. James looked genuinely embarrassed. That's why I invited them to talk to Isabella. She understands these things better than I do. Isabella looked at the 3 people and then at James. May I ask you something? What would you need for legal aid to truly help you? Mrs. Green's face brightened. For it to be in the afternoons or on weekends, and in places we already go, like the community health center or the neighborhood school, ma'am. And for them to explain things to us like normal people, Luis added. Not like we're illiterate, but not like we're lawyers either. And for them to understand that sometimes the legal problem is just one part of the real problem, Andrea said. My mom needs a divorce, but she also needs a job and childcare for my younger siblings. Isabella nodded, taking mental notes. What if there was someone who knew both the legal problems and the other problems? Someone who could help you connect with different services. Mrs. Green's eyes lit up. That would be perfect. Like how do you say it? A coordinator. Isabella smiled. Exactly. A coordinator. She turned to James, who had been listening in silence. What do you think? I think I need a coordinator, he replied without hesitation. Someone who understands the legal side and the human side. Isabella felt a tingle in her stomach. It wasn't the first time she had been offered a job, but this time it felt different. This time, she felt the offer came from someone who truly saw her. Are you offering me a job? I'm asking you to teach me how to do this well. The job is yours if you want it. But more than that, I'm asking you to be my partner. Partner? The program needs someone to make important decisions. Someone who understands the people we want to help. I can be the lawyer, but you would be the director. Isabella looked at Mrs. Green, Luis, Andrea. In their faces, she saw genuine hope, not the false gratitude she had learned to recognize in so many well-intentioned but poorly executed social programs. I can think about it, of course. After the others left, Isabella and James were alone in the coffee shop. "Why me?" Isabella asked. "There are people with more experience in legal aid." James looked her directly in the eyes. "Because in 3 years of working with you, I never saw you treat anyone as if they were less than you, not even me when I behaved like an idiot." Isabella felt something stir in her chest. "James," she began, "I know I have no right to ask you to trust me after everything that happened, but I believe that together we could do something really good, something that matters." Isabella was silent for a moment, looking at her hands. "Do you know what's the hardest part of all this?" "What?" "That for the first time in my life, someone is seeing me exactly as I am, without projecting onto me what they need me to be, without trying to save me or use me to feel better about themselves." James extended his hand across the table, without touching hers, just offering it. "When someone finally truly sees you, you no longer have to prove anything else." Isabella looked at his hand, and after a moment placed hers on top. "All right," she said softly. "Let's try." It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It wasn't a declaration of love. It was something much more real, and for that very reason, much more valuable. It was an honest beginning, a legacy of respect. A legacy of respect. A year later, Isabella arrived at the office early, as always. It was no longer the small, borrowed room where the program had begun, but a proper space on the first floor of a building in the historic center. The walls were filled with photos, graduations from digital literacy courses, families reunited after solving legal problems, children in scholarship programs. The program had grown beyond what anyone had imagined. It was no longer just legal aid, but a comprehensive center, offering everything from computer classes to entrepreneurship workshops. Isabella had insisted that everything be free and that schedules adapt to people's real needs. James arrived half an hour later with 2 coffees and a bag of sweetbread from Mrs. Marta's stall, the woman who sold on the corner and who had now resolved her pension problems thanks to the program. "Good morning, Director," he said with a smile, placing one of the coffees on Isabella's desk. "Good morning, people's lawyer," she replied, without looking up from the files she was reviewing. It was their morning routine. James brought the coffee. Isabella organized the day. They had developed a working dynamic that functioned perfectly because neither of them tried to be someone they weren't. "How are this week's cases going?" James asked, sitting in the chair across from Isabella's desk. "Mrs. Green will finally receive her full pension. Luis got paid the overtime he was owed. And Andrea," Isabella smiled. "Andrea decided to study law. Seriously, we got her a full scholarship at the public university. She says she wants to be like us when she grows up." James laughed. "Like us? Do you remember when we were boss and employee?" Isabella looked at him over her papers. "I remember when you thought you were my boss." Touché. The door opened, and Sophia entered, now working part-time for the program while finishing her social work studies. "Isabella, the magazine journalist, is here. Shall I let him in?" Isabella sighed. Since the program had started receiving national recognition, the media wouldn't leave them alone. They had rejected most interviews, but this one was for a serious educational magazine. "Let him in." The journalist was young, enthusiastic. For an hour, he asked them questions about methods, funding, future plans. But in the end, as always happened, he got to the personal questions. "You two have an interesting story," he said. "From firm conflict to partners in this project, how would you describe your relationship now?" Isabella and James looked at each other. It was the question that always came up, and that they never knew how to answer. "We are colleagues," Isabella finally said. "Friends," James added. "People who learn to work together, Isabella continued. And personally, the journalist insisted. There are rumors that... Personally, James interrupted firmly. We are two people who decided that the work we do is more important than the rumors people want to invent about us. After the journalist left, Isabella and James organized the papers in silence. Does it bother you? James asked. That they always ask about this? Isabella shrugged. At first, yes, but I've gotten used to it. People always need to romanticize things to understand them. What if it were true? James asked softly. What if there were something more between us? Isabella stopped writing and looked at him. Is there? James considered the question seriously. There's respect. There's admiration. There's affection. Is that enough to call it love? I don't know, Isabella replied honestly, but I know it's real, and I know it's ours, no matter what others call it. James nodded. I like our life just as it is. Me too. It was true. They saw each other almost every day. They shared meals. They laughed at private jokes. They supported each other in difficult times. James had been there when Isabella got the flu. Isabella had been there when James received the news that his father had passed away. They didn't live together. They had no plans for marriage. They didn't appear in romantic photos on social media, but they had something that many official couples never achieved. They saw each other completely. They respected each other deeply, and they had built something important together. The world was still competitive, elitist, unequal, but within their small space, they had created something different. They weren't trying to change the whole world. They were just living more honestly within it. And at the end of the day, when they closed the office and walked together to the subway station, Isabella knew she had found something she had never looked for, but had always needed. Someone who saw her exactly as she was. And that, she decided, was enough. Did you enjoy Isabella and James's story? This narrative reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful endings are not the ones we expect, but the most real ones. Isabella didn't need a prince to rescue her. She rescued herself with dignity and strength. And James learned that true power does not reside in money or social position, but in knowing how to recognize and value the extraordinary people around us. If this story touched your heart, give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to remember that their worth does not depend on others' opinions. The transformation of these characters reminds us that it's never too late to change, to see with new eyes, to build something better on the ruins of what didn't work. If you want to keep reading more stories like this, full of real characters facing situations we can all understand, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any chapters. And now, tell us, from what country are you watching us?